Welcome to Where Parents Talk. My name is Lianne Castelino. Our guest today is a broadcaster who is in his 25th season as a color analyst for the Toronto Raptors. Jack Armstrong is also a musician, a former college basketball coach, and a father of three. He joins us today from his home in Lewiston, New York. Thank you so much for taking time.
Leanne, my pleasure. Glad to be on with you.
And we're going to talk about all things parenting. And I'd like to start by asking you, had you always wanted to be a dad?
Yes, absolutely. There's no question about it. There was always something as a young person that I looked at and felt like, it's kind of like a higher calling. It's like the ultimate calling that you could have. And so to me, yeah, no doubt. And, my dad passed away when I was 7. So I didn't have a dad in my life for most of my life. My mom did an amazing job raising us, and she's my hero. And I just even looking at the job that my mom did raising 4 boys by herself, uh, you just have that much more respect for what a parent is and the impact a parent can make on a young person's life. So yeah, absolutely.
So when you think about your mom, who was a widow at fairly young age, single mother then who raised 4 boys, you were the last of the 4. What stood out for you in terms of how you sort of watched that unfold over your life?
Well, I would say incredible resiliency because my parents are immigrants to the United States from Ireland. And, to lose a husband at age 48 of a heart attack, and to now, my dad was 48 when he passed, and to now have to raise 4 boys by yourself. My mom was a cafeteria worker at PS 238, a little public school in Brooklyn. And, obviously it's not easy raising 4 boys on a small salary. And I just think that she is a person with great faith and will and love and spirit and determination that guided us on that path in life and was very instrumental in terms of everything that I think my 3 brothers and I have in our lives. Um, I can't thank her enough. We can't thank her enough. She's, as I mentioned earlier, our hero. I call my mother every single day, sometime between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., and I always finish the conversation with the 3 most magical words you can say to someone, and that is, I love you. Um, she's 96 and lives on her own in New York, and she's doing great. And, we're her legacy. And, now my children and my 3 brothers' children are her legacy. 14 grandchildren, now a great grandchild. And so to me, I'm just part of that circle of life and part of that little piece of the puzzle. And she just showed us the right way. And there were, obviously growing up in Brooklyn, there were some challenging situations in a challenging place. And, a lot of people I know went the wrong way. And she wouldn't let us go the wrong way. She was our guiding light. So to me, you look back sometimes and you say, how did I get through that? And, you always come back to that same person. And as much as you want to give yourself credit, you always look back and you say, no, that was instilled in me. And I think that's the higher calling I'm talking about in terms of parenthood, that you kind of leave a little bit of yourself within that next person that you have an impact on. And not just as a parent, as a coach and as a mentor and a colleague, whatever, a friend. We all leave a little something of ourselves with each other.
Now, you have been a coach from a very young age. And speaking of being a guiding light, along that path from a young age until today, when you're no longer coaching directly, but you're around coaches, you see these young players all the time, was being a father figure part of how you saw coaching?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that it would be disgraceful if you didn't see that as a big part of your job. If you're just in it for the clear cut, hey, winning and losing, hey, this is a business, then players see through that. And I think that has an impact on the relationship. And when that relationship reaches a point, as it always does in coaching, where there's going to be disagreement and conflict and trying to get back on the same page, if you haven't shown that you care about them as a person, first and foremost, it's going to be hard to bridge that gap. And I've always been a big believer you can go through life being a bridge builder, or you can go through life being a wall builder. And I'd rather build bridges than I'd rather build walls. So that's all part of it is that you show you care, you're there for them, you have empathy and love and spirit and soul, and you're in there in the fight with them. Sometimes you're giving them tough love and telling them what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear. But nonetheless, you're there for them and you have their back because it's not transactional. It's real. It's love and it's passion and it's emotion and it's something that it's a shared journey. And just like it's a shared journey with your own children as a father, it's that same journey with your players. And I used to always say, as a college coach, that these 4 years affect how you do the next 40. And we're part of that. And the thing I'm most proud of is that every guy I coached in my time at Fordham University and Niagara University has their college degree. And maybe I played a little small part in their development, not only as a student, but much, much more, and as a player, but much, much more importantly, trying to help them on their journey as a young man reach their goals and reach their potential.
Now, along those lines, Jack, what specific attributes of coaching that you covet do you believe translate directly into parenting?
Well, I've always been a big believer in the 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. I think if overwhelmingly, if you spend time with a coach, and my wife is a former Division I head coach herself, she was a women's soccer coach at Niagara University and also women's basketball assistant. So she was a Division I coach in 2 sports. That's where we met. But I think you got to have a plan. You got to be organized. You have to have because particularly when you raise kids all within the same age group, it's absolute utter bedlam and chaos. And many times it could be a gong show because they're all going in 85 different directions and it's very stressful. And, obviously I travel for a living. I give my wife so much credit. I mean, she's an amazing person with great spirit and just just relentless in terms of, we got those kids to what they needed to be at every day. And I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And that's what parents do. And but I think there are the things that matter to the soul, and that's the love and the care and the compassion and the empathy and the concern and the guidance and all those things that you bring. But you also have to bring structure, and structure is important. Uh, that they understand, how we go about our daily schedule and having a plan. And let's not mistake activity for achievement. We're not just running around with no purpose. And so I think coaching helps that there's a mission statement, there's a game plan, there's a vision for what we want to get accomplished. We don't know what that's going to end up being, but I think just being able to give them some structure and stability, I think is very important. I think in coaching, that's what you're trying to do every day. And I think in parenthood, there's something to that.
Let's go to the story about how you and your wife became parents. And I'm curious as to, had you ever thought about adoption in a deep and meaningful way prior to both of you looking at that as an option to have a family?
We had friends that had adopted children. but we just always thought we were going to be fortunate enough to have our own children, and unfortunately, we couldn't. And then when that took place, um, it's a very emotional experience, and nonetheless, it was like, hey, well, let's do this then. And I said to my wife, Tina, I said, I didn't marry you for your ability biologically to have children. I married you because I love you. Let's adopt. And it's funny, one of my former colleagues, a guy named Ed Sands, who was an assistant at Fordham University with me from 1984 to 88. Ed then was coaching high school basketball, and I was recruiting one of his players in New York City. And we were out to dinner, and we just started chatting. And he and his wife adopted a few boys. And so that's kind of how it happened. I connected my wife with his wife. They had a conversation, and then the wheels just started rolling. So, and then they asked us, the adoption agency, well, what kind of child would you like? And we were like, what are you talking about? We'll take what you got. We'll take any child. I mean, whoever needs a home, we'd be honored and blessed to have a child. So they said, well, we're having a difficult time right now placing minority, African-American boys. Like, hey, we're in. Count us in. We'll do it. We'd be honored and thrilled and blessed to have a boy. And then one boy led to two boys led to three, and we had three in diapers at one time. So it's been an amazing journey and an absolute blessing. So, it's the best decision. My wife, I would say the best two decisions I've made in my life were, number one, asking my wife to marry me. And number two, my wife and I collectively as a partnership, deciding to adopt three boys. And it's the best decisions in my life.
It's such a powerful story as you recount it, because we are talking about more than 20 years ago when you adopted your first son. And I wonder, with the joy of welcoming this new family member, did you have any trepidation? Were you nervous at all about the fact that you were now going to welcome a child from a different cultural background into your new family?
Well, it's interesting that first child just got married 2 weeks ago in California. So, so one down, two to go in that category. And now they're 27, 26, 25. And trepidation, I don't think so. I mean, at the time that we adopted, I was a Division I men's basketball coach. My wife was a soccer coach. I mean, and particularly in what I do, there are a number of African American players that I coached, and coaches that work for me, good friends. So I felt like I was in the perfect environment and to have a support system. And then going from coaching to working in the NBA with the Raptors, where I'm in my 26th year, again, there was that natural connection that they're going to be around some people that look like them and can be also mentors and role models to them and help along that journey. But the thing I learned a long time ago, growing up in Brooklyn and in my whole career as a coach, whether it be grade school, high school, college, my whole experience, people are people. Yeah, we all come from different backgrounds and all that, but ultimately it's your soul. That if I cut you and you cut me, we both bleed the same color, and we're people. And it's ultimately about the love and the compassion and the care and your soul, and being able to get past all that other stuff. And to me, that's what it's all about. So, you always have moments where you say to yourself, can I bridge that gap sometimes? And there are times where you say, I need a little bit of advice, and I would reach out to folks that maybe have walked in those shoes to help me through some of those things. And it's been very helpful.
What would you say gave you that confidence? Was it, as you described, just being around that scene of other young people from different cultural backgrounds, et cetera, that helped you, sort of empowered you as a new dad? Or were there other things that you relied on to give you that confidence to become a parent?
Well, I just think in your heart, you know you're doing the right thing, and your faith uh, that you're doing the right thing, and the support. Uh, my mom, my wife's parents, my wife's family, my family, our friends, everyone got behind us and were incredibly supportive. And I just think that our kids were just smothered with love and support and direction and foundation and structure. That anywhere they turned, there was somebody there for them, and somebody with an embrace and a kind word, and sometimes a very direct word when they needed it. Because when you're raising three boys, they need that.
Mm-hmm.
uh, so uh, to me, I don't know. I don't know if it was confidence. I just felt like, hey, in your heart, when you know you're doing the right thing, the answers start coming on their own.
Well, and you talk about having a game plan, right? As a coach and certainly as a parent, having that a strategy sort of mapped out. Um, you talked about the structure as well. And I'm curious, with your busy schedule, your career that has continued on while you and your wife are raising these kids, what did the Armstrong game plan look like for you to survive, you and your wife to survive all the different ages and stages of parenting?
Well, the funny thing is, we have a mudroom downstairs here in our house, and there's a calendar in the mudroom. Right now, the calendar is empty. Sadly, because all three boys are grown up and they're out of the house and they're all doing their own thing, and we're very proud of them. But that calendar on a weekly basis was completely filled. And people ask me sometimes, why don't you live in Toronto? You work in Toronto. Why don't you live in Toronto? My wife's family's from here in Lewiston, and you look at um, the fact that where I live, I mean, I can look out my window right behind me, and Canada's 400 yards from me. I live right across from Niagara Lake. I live right on the Niagara River. So I'm kind of like an adopted Canadian. A lot of adoption going on. And but to have my wife's family around here and a kind of a built-in support system for my kids, it just made complete sense to stay here and for me to commute in and out when I needed to. And it's worked out great for 26 years. I'm glad we stayed here. And all my friends from Toronto, when they come and visit and they go, wow, you live right on the Niagara River across from Niagara Lake. What a beautiful spot. And now it all makes sense of why you would stay where you are, because your kids had that built-in support system. So, and I'm not saying wouldn't have happened in Toronto. It just was easier at that point when you have three in diapers at one time. That you need that stability and that sureness. That when I'm on a road trip for 2 weeks, that my wife has the help that she needs, and her family and friends. And we have a young lady that her mom was in our wedding party, one of my wife's dear friends, and her daughter ended up being kind of like somewhat of our nanny. That she would drop by the house every day at 3 o'clock. My wife was working, and she picked them up at school, and they'd sit around the kitchen table and they'd have grilled cheese or whatever, and they'd do their homework. And then my wife would get home from work around 4:30, and then off we go to hockey and basketball and swimming and all these different activities every night. And so it was just mayhem. And then when I would have my off season, I was kind of like the proverbial Mr. Mom, where I'm taking the three boys everywhere. So we missed those days. I'm speaking to you on a Sunday. I got home. We landed in Toronto after playing the Chicago Bulls in a crazy overtime loss. And by the time I got home after a long, flight and game going late, I got home at 4 o'clock in the morning, pulled into my driveway. And, I said to myself, how did I do it? How did my wife do it? When you have maybe a 7, 6, and 5-year-old at home, you get home at 4, and now you're up at 6 because you got to be at the rink at 6:30 to lace up their skates and put them on the ice. And then there's a full day ahead where they're going to 3 different sports and all that times 3, so you think of the energy that you have and you have to have. But the thing I learned too is that at some point in time, you got to let go of that it's about you and get to the realization that it's now about them. It's their time. I've had my time and I'm not giving up on myself. And my wife didn't give up on herself. And you need to have your time with your friends and your time together, more importantly, as a husband and wife, to do your thing. But you got to put a lot into it. You got to dive headfirst into their lives because they're the ones that matter. And we're adults now, and we got to help them get to that point.
I'm curious as to how your sons would describe you as dad.
You know what? Honestly, I couldn't answer that question because they would be the ones that have to describe it. I can tell you what I've tried to do as a dad. And as we know, and as every parent knows, and as every coach knows, as every leader knows, we succeed in some areas, we fail in others. But I always try to. I tell my kids every single solitary chance I get, whether it be a spoken word, the written word, through action. I always tell my kids I love them. Every time I'm in their presence, I hug them and always kiss them. I always, but that, a lot of that's ceremonial, but then you have to follow through with it with your actions. And your actions got to tell them on a daily basis that you love them and the different things that you do with your kids to let them know that, hey, I'm there for you, good, bad, or indifferent, I got your back. And there's tough times too, where you got to give them tough love and you got to set them straight and you got to say, no, this is unacceptable. And these are the standards and you're not meeting the standards. And I expect more of you and we're going to get there. And I'm going to be there to help you get there. And there are going to be times you don't want to do it, but you're going to do it. And so I would say I've tried to be, of the two of us, I think my wife is a very direct, come at you, straight. And, I think my boys all know her bark is a little bigger than her bite, but nonetheless, there's bite. And they're on blast when they're around her. And yet, I could be very firm and direct as well, but nonetheless, I'm probably more of the conversational type. And let's try to get to the core and the root of what the issue is. So I've always tried to be that mentor and that guide and that helping hand. And as I said, they'd be the better one to answer how well I did, I guess. But you try your best every day to show them the way. And, I had a teacher one time, there's a song by the Eagles, Already Gone. Sometimes you can see the stars, but you can't see the light. And when you're raising children, and the same as when you're coaching young people, they see the star, but they don't see the light. And it's our job as a parent or your job as a coach or a leader, whatever it may be, to help those young people see the light. And it's the same thing. Do they see the tree or do they see the forest? Maybe as a parent, you see the forest and the child only sees the tree. So it's your job to kind of stretch them out and help them on that journey. And there's a lot of times they go down the wrong path and you got to help them find the right path and you got to be there for them. So, man, I tried my best. And I couldn't have been prouder a few weeks ago when my oldest son, Kevin, got married. So, and you see just how he carries himself, but more importantly, my 2 other boys in his wedding party, and seeing the 3 of them interact and play off each other and bust each other's chops and have fun with each other, and being at his bachelor party back in the spring and just, hanging out now and being kind of a secondary figure and hanging out with his friends and my sons and kind of I'm along for the ride now. And these guys are all in their late 20s and they're like, hey, Mr. Armstrong, this, that, the other thing. And I'm just following orders, So it's really cool to see how they navigate the world now.
Speaking of navigating the world, certainly in the last 3 years in particular, the whole issue of race and, racialization are in the headlines basically every day since George Floyd's death. And I wonder, how did you address this topic with your sons, and what did that look like?
Well, it was a very painful time in everyone's life. And obviously, I think for my sons, the good part of it was that they were older and they could absorb it a little bit better. Maybe if they were 10, 11, and 12 rather than in their early 20s, it probably would have been even a little bit more difficult. But so that my point is, I think I could have a really adult, direct conversation with them about what was going on and how disgraceful it was and how that the world has to change and the United States has to change and the history in terms of civil rights and race relations needs to grow and improve not only significantly but dramatically. So being able to have those conversations with your children and say, hey, I support this and I support how you feel and we're here for you and we've always been here for you and we're always going to be here for you and that this is wrong. And I think what I think ultimately when I look at it from my wife and I, some people talk it, other people live it, and I feel like my wife and I have lived it. We lived the cause, and that is that we love these three boys, and I couldn't love a biological son or daughter any more than I love my three sons. And I think that's what kind of the whole core of everything is that why are you looking at someone based upon the color of their skin or their religious background or whatever the case may be? What does that have to do with anything? It should have nothing to do with anything. So to me, I think that's the lesson we've always tried to instill is that, it's about people. It's about who, respecting people. And, I don't know. I think that goes back to my faith.
Jack, what would you say strikes you most as you look out at the parenting landscape today?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is, and there's so much pressure on parents today for you to raise the perfect daughter or the perfect son. And that's never going to happen because we're all perfectly imperfect. And we have to accept sometimes that our son or daughter isn't going to end up going to the top college, isn't going to be the best hockey player or soccer player, that they're not going to be the best dancer at the dance recital or the best singer at the school play or whatever the case may be. It's okay. And I think sometimes we enable too much rather than empower. Kids need to fail. Kids need to know it's okay to fail. Failure is part of the journey. What we need to do a better job of, and look, guilty is charged. I think I've been guilty of enabling, and I feel like I've been at my best when I've empowered. We have to teach them resiliency. We have to teach them that you're going to fail, and that's okay. We're going to be here for you. And the most important thing is you got to get back up. And as parents, our love is the safety net for them. Nonetheless, we can't be there catching them all the time. They got to catch themselves and make good life decisions. Because what do they say? The only way you lose in a game of life is if you beat yourself. But those are the things you instill in them every day. So I think the idea of helicopter parent is something that there's so much pressure on parents today that they feel like they have to raise that perfect child. And there's no textbook. There's no rule book. Parenting is a case-by-case thing. And look, we have three boys, and none of them are related biologically. They're all come from different backgrounds. You could be I'm from a house, three older brothers, and we're all biologically wired the same. Nonetheless, we're all unique and all distinctly different. And my point is, there's no right or wrong way, and it's a case by case basis. I think you have to try to instill the same values, and you have to try to instill the discipline. You got to be consistent on those fronts, and you could provide that love and all that. But sometimes they need a pat on the back, and sometimes they need a kick in the ass. It all depends which one you're dealing with, and at many times it varies based upon the circumstance.
Absolutely. Jack Armstrong, color analyst for the Toronto Raptors and dad of three, thank you so much for sharing your time and your lived experience with us today.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I would, for any parent, any person out there, I would strongly encourage adoption. I think it's a wonderful thing. And there are so many children out there right now that need someplace and need loving parents. So I absolutely advocate for it. And I hope our story in some way, shape, or form maybe resonates with somebody and gets them to reflect on maybe that decision in their life. So I know I don't regret it, and I know my wife doesn't regret it. And it's, again, as I've said many times, it's been a blessing. People say to you all the time, "What a great thing you did for these three kids." And I always say, "Great thing I did." Are you kidding me? You got it completely wrong. It's in the reverse. They've made our life complete. They've made our life whole. They've made our life. They've made our family. So no, the blessing's been in reverse towards my wife and I.
It's a wonderful story. We really appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you, Lianne.